So I try to stay native within the CFA curriculum. I don't create review notes. And the reason why is level one is a unique situation from 2 and 3. So level one is a lot of formulas and a lot of definitions. Level 2 is siloed information that's still equity valuation, but we took what we learned at level 1 and we dove really deep. We looked at fixed income, we dive really deep. We look at valuation of options and corporate finance, we just dive deep. But the topics rarely touch each other. So if you think about it, level 1 is like undergraduate pre-med. Level 2 is like med school, but level 3 is now you're a resident. You're becoming a doctor. You're becoming a professional in the investment profession. And so a lot of level 1 and level 2 material is stuff we can find in a lot of different textbooks. So we can kind of assimilate and create review notes. But level 3 is so specific to the CFA Institute's readings and guidelines that they kind of put into the curriculum. We don't find that material anyplace else. So you have to stay somewhat native to the curriculum and dive in, learn it. And so the practice at level 3 is more of, you have to learn the curriculum because it is now far more integrated. Trading behaviors touch behavioral finance. Behavioral finance touches the individual client. The client then touches asset allocation. What are the behavioral biases in asset allocation? So it's a much more integrated system. And if I try to translate that from CFA world to a review note, I tend to lose a lot of context. And so in order to practice level 3, I have the candidates do what I call the 4 magic things. If you read the curriculum, you'll find examples within the curriculum. I call them white text examples. And so a paragraph will have a bunch of numbers in it. That's what you have to study. There's an example within the book. It has a gray box, a blue box around it. That's what you want to study. It's in our nature as students to go, I want to get the chapter done quickly. Let me skip these examples. You do so at your peril. Number 3, end of chapter questions. Not as important as the white text in the blue box, but these end of chapter questions, highly important. And lastly, the CFA Institute has a huge learning environment, an ecosystem that you need to go out and then practice what you've learned in the curriculum in what the environment now the CFA Institute is trying to do too. Because sometimes the material there will kind of guide you as what's going to be on the exam. It's a little bit of a telltale. It kind of gives you a pattern. So I stay within the curriculum and not try to do anything substitutive, but I try to teach it to you and show you how to solve those difficult problems and those challenges that are faced at level 3 that's unique from level 2 and level 1. For a moment, so we learn the skills at level 2, and then we apply them at level 3. And so if I borrow a phrase from the CFA Institute, the thing that I try to tell the level 3 candidate is it's theory and practice. Theory and practice. You have to learn the theory and then you have to apply it in practice. And our exam at level 3 is so different than level 1 and level 2. At level 1 and level 2, the answer's there on the page. You can get to it if you work hard enough and figure it out, work around it. I know there's a time constraint, but the answer's there. At level 3 in a morning essay, the answer's not there. And so the biggest hurdle that I think a level 3 candidate has, I rarely hear of a level 3 candidate saying, well, the afternoon item sets crushed me. I ran out of time. I didn't have time to solve things. It's always a morning crushed me. I couldn't answer the essay. What's the breakdown? And the breakdown tends to be, they don't put pencil to paper. It's one thing to do an equation and solve a problem. It's another thing to take a concept and try to write it down. And they oftentimes come back and they say, I read questions, I read solutions, but I never wrote it down on paper. And there's just a fundamental breakdown between nowadays we type everything, we thumb everything, but we rarely take a pencil and write it out on paper. Now, I don't know how that's going to change given a computer-based exam, if we're going to be typing or if we're going to be writing with a stylus on an iPad. I haven't heard yet how that's going to be taken. But when it comes to doing practice essays, I think Rafe is great in saying you have to work the CFA Institute material first. And I would say that, as anybody would tell you, time is a huge issue in a morning essay. And so the more frequently that you can revise and review and go over and solve, it's like those calculus problems in college, that the more you did your problems over and over, the faster and the quicker you learned them, the quicker you can solve them, recognize them through familiarity, and execute quickly. That facilitates the morning essay. as long as they practice writing the solutions and applying theory and practice when they do so. And so many candidates sidestep adding their solutions that they'll do the theory because they're under such time constraint, and they fail to answer how it applies to the client, the portfolio, the capital markets, or the financial market participant. Once they bridge those together through multiple practice sessions, either through blue boxes, the problem is now the Institute has said, we don't want you to look at old exams anymore. So that opportunity set is now closed down. And so now that opens up opportunity sets for other review providers to provide mock exams. What I'm always very cautious about is I've always told the candidate, do the work in the CFA Institute first, the white text, the blue box, the practice problems, the echo environment that CFA Institute has, doing multiple times. But if you get near the exam and you want extra practice, then reach out and start working mocks. But don't work mocks first at the expense of not doing the CFA Institute work. That does not work. And I think Z is spot on. I find that there's a fatigue factor, a blur factor. I've seen it already. I'm not going to answer it. Fewer is probably better, the 4 to 5 range from what I've heard. You start getting into too much, you get candidates that just get stressed, they get pittered out, they just can't think anymore. And that gets to be a problem too, is the fatigue factor as they roll into getting closer and closer to the exam. You know, I've had people call me on a Thursday before the exam and say, you know, I've got the accounting designation, I know my ethics well. What else do I need to know? I'm not even going to review it. And they just get slammed on the exam. So what I always try to make akin to is, you know, taking that standards of professional conduct book and trying to read it is like taking a 10-gallon fish tank full of water and trying to drink it in one sitting. And so what I try to tell the candidate is, I said, you got 7 standards, 22 substandards, take a paper clip and paper clip your book at every substandard. And every day, like whatever good book you decide to read, spend the day, the morning, whatever, and read that one substandard. And then once you've gone through those 22 days, start from the back, go to the front, start from the middle, go to the back, then go back to the front, and start in January. Now the key is, once you get your standards down, the application, the theory, standard, and the practice, the questions are in the back of that volume 1. And the problem is that that volume 1 bank of about 180 questions is just jumbled. And so the candidate can kind of get into it and they just get lost with one ethics question or another. And so what I've tried to do is I slice and dice that in such a way that once you read one substandard, standard 3B, I've got a matrix that says that every question that's in the back of that reading, these are the ones that you need to go look at. So then you read the standard, go look at those questions that are in random order, but now I've got them on a line, and you just keep going through the sequence. So you learn the standard of practice, the theory, then the question, the application, the practice, every time you read your standard. And if you can do that many different times, then on exam day, you quickly get to those 3 questions. One of them, you're like, that's ridiculous. And you're like, okay, yeah, I remember that. Or I remember seeing that differentiation. I got it, move on. And they just nail it. But it's frequency, it's familiarity, it's working in the candidate curriculum. I think there's 2 primary mistakes. The one is, I always tell the candidates, if you've ever picked up a rotary dial phone in the last 10 years, it doesn't work anymore. And the problem is, so many candidates think that what they did at level 1 and or level 2 is going to work for level 3. And they have to recognize that whatever they might have done, it needs to adapt and to change. The adaptive market hypothesis has to be applied here. And along with that, if they don't recognize, and this is, if I would say to the people who have a CFA designation, I would tell them to stop saying the most important thing they can stop saying to a level 3 candidate. It's an easy exam. It's a punt. Just go take it. Because the level 3 exam is not an easy exam. It is far more challenging than when they changed the curriculum in 2005, 6, and 7. The pass rates went through the floor, and it hasn't gotten any better. And they changed the curriculum in the last 3 years. And I would say to them, whoever is telling you that the level 3 exam is a punt, a very easy, just show up and take the exam, has been misled. So you can't do what you've done in the past. You have to adapt, and you have to recognize You are now at the top of the pyramid. Every candidate that's past level 1 and level 2 is smart. And now you're competing against those smart people with a very challenging theory and practice exam. So it's very different in the environment. The people you're competing against are much more stringent. The failures that dropped out of level 2 that quit and moved on, you have a battle in front of you. And if you don't put in the effort and the time for that battle, you're underestimating what's going to take to pass. And you want to get that charter and do it one time. So don't blow it off. Don't think it's easy. Don't just keep doing the same thing you're doing. You're going to have to adapt. Yeah, so what I've been telling candidates is I said, we need to approach this from two different approaches. One is, are you going to be emotional or rational about it? And are you going to look at the macro or the micro? So if we go with the rational versus the rational being might say, given what I understand and what I see the landscape, it's not likely I might be able to take the exam. There's an uncertainty there. I need to get past my emotions of I want to get this done. I got to get this done. I'll do this. Because the problem is that, as Harry Houdini once found out, an unexpected gut punch will kill you. And so if you can stand back and say, I'm not going to take the chance of a gut punch in December, I'll just defer it. It takes away that uncertainty. And as I said earlier, uncertainty is the devil's ugly stepbrother. It can throw so much havoc into your family life, your job, your career. And we know that, at least with the computer-based testing, the macro perspective is things will be a little bit clearer as we move into the spring. The exam center is a little bit more stringent with regard to, social distancing and how many people we can put in there. So a lot of uncertainty tends to come down. Now, the micro concern is, wait, I want to be the last person taking a written based versus a computer based. And I don't want to be standing on the gas pedal of an electric car with Elon Musk and finding out that electric car does not work. And I don't want to be the guinea pig in May taking the first computer based test. I have a high confidence level in the CFA Institute that whatever exam they provide in May will be just as rigorous, just as challenging, just as exhausting as it has always been. And they've been putting things through all of those hurdles to make sure that whatever micro uncertainty is far less than the macro uncertainty we have with the December-based test. So if you can separate the rational from the emotional and look big picture, I think it leads you to a conclusion that you just take some time, be with family, get through the kids back in school, whatever it might be, the challenges that you have in your job, and start studying again in November, and then work toward the June exam. There's just a greater likelihood that that's going to be a success for a lot more candidates.